My name is Aizere Serikova and I am 36 years old. I live in the restless, grinding heart of New York City, a place where people usually believe they are the masters of their own destiny, shaped by their own hands and their own bank accounts. I was one of those people, born to Kazakh parents who valued hard work and the tangible rewards of the American dream. I grew up in a household where tradition was a memory and religion was something we had left behind in the old country. To me, Christianity was always a cultural relic, a set of ancient rules that didn't fit the fast-paced, digital world I inhabited. I saw it as something people leaned on when they weren't strong enough to face the harsh realities of life on their own, a mental safety net for those who couldn't handle the cold truth of our existence. I worked as a senior consultant, climbing the corporate ladder with a singular focus, believing that if I could just earn enough, achieve enough, and buy enough, the underlying emptiness of my life would finally be filled. Just last month, I thought I had reached the summit. I bought my own house in Queens, a beautiful Victorian that I planned to renovate into a masterpiece. It was February 14th, 2026, a day the rest of the world was celebrating romance, but I was sitting alone in my new home. The house was vast and echoey, completely empty, except for a single gray suede couch I had moved in the day before. I hadn't even bought a bed yet. I sat there in the dim light of the evening, staring at the bare walls, and for the first time in my life, the weight of my success felt like lead. I had everything I had ever worked for, yet I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Driven by a sudden, inexplicable impulse, I slid off the couch and knelt on the cold hardwood floor. I didn't know who I was talking to, but I put my forehead against the fabric of the couch and whispered a prayer. I asked if there was anyone actually listening, if there was a purpose beyond the spreadsheets and the meetings and the hollow pursuit of more. I didn't ask for a sign. I just asked for the truth. I never heard the explosion. Later, they would tell me that a gas line in the basement, corroded and forgotten, had been leaking for days. A single spark from the old heating system was all it took. 1 second, I was whispering into the suede of my couch, and the next, there was no couch, no house, and no body. I didn't feel the heat or the pain of the blast. I felt a sudden, violent release, as if I had been wearing a suit of armor 10 sizes too small, and it had finally been stripped away. I was floating in a space that wasn't dark, but wasn't quite light either. I could see the wreckage of my house below me, the orange flames licking at the night sky, the sirens of the FDNY screaming as they turned the corner. But I felt no connection to it. The 36 years of striving, the debt, the ambition, the fear of aging, it all vanished in a heartbeat. Then the light appeared. It didn't come from a single point. It seemed to be the very fabric of the space I was in. As it grew brighter, I saw him. Nothing I had ever seen in a museum or a movie could have prepared me for the reality of Jesus standing before me. He was tall, with skin the color of rich earth and hair like dark silk, but it was his eyes that stopped my heart. They were ancient and young at the same time, filled with a love so intense it felt like a physical weight against my chest. In his gaze, I saw everything I had ever done, every lie I'd told to get ahead, every time I'd looked down on someone for their faith, every moment of pride. But there was no condemnation. There was only an infinite, heartbreaking compassion. I realized then that my skepticism hadn't been a sign of intelligence, but a wall I'd built to keep this very love out. I fell to my knees, sobbing with a relief I can't describe. It was like coming home after a lifetime of wandering in a blizzard. "Aizere," he said. His voice didn't just hit my ears, it resonated through every fiber of my being, tasting like warm honey and sounding like the rustle of 1,000 trees. "You asked for the truth. Now, you must see the path that lies ahead for the world you left behind." He reached out and took my hand, and suddenly, we weren't in that radiant space anymore. We were standing on a high, jagged peak, looking down at the entire world spread out like a living map. I could see the pulse of the cities, the lights of the highways, and the millions of people going about their lives, completely unaware of the fragility of the threads holding their world together. "Look closely, Aizere," he told me. "The world is entering a season of great shaking. The systems they trust are failing, not because of a single accident, but because they have built their houses on the shifting sands of human pride." He showed me a vision of the coming weeks. I saw the calendar in the sky moving forward from today, February 18th, 2026. I saw people in their offices, staring at screens, chasing the same hollow goals I had chased. I saw the tension rising in the streets of New York, a sense of dread that people were trying to drown out with noise and entertainment. Then the vision slowed down as it reached the beginning of April. The first darkness will be a sign of my authority over the elements they think they have mastered, Jesus said. On April 5th, 2026, the sky will bear witness to the state of the human soul. I watched as the sun began to change. It didn't go out like a candle. It seemed to be veiled by something invisible and heavy. I saw the date April 5th, 2026 glowing in the atmosphere. Across the globe, I saw the birds stop singing. I saw animals retreating into their dens as a strange, bruised purple light settled over the earth. In the vision, I was back in New York City. It was mid-afternoon, but the shadows were long and distorted. People were standing on the sidewalks, holding up their phones to record the sky, laughing nervously, thinking it was a rare eclipse or a strange weather phenomenon. But then, the laughter stopped. At exactly 3 p.m., the light didn't just fade, it collapsed. This was the beginning of the 3 days of darkness. I saw the power plants across the country begin to shudder. It wasn't a failure of the wires or the machines, but a change in the air itself. The electricity seemed to lose its ability to travel. I saw the great turbines in the dams slow down and stop. I saw the lights of Manhattan flicker once, twice, and then vanish into a blackness so thick it felt like a physical substance. This first event is a 3-day Sabbath that I am forcing upon a world that refuses to rest, Jesus explained. For 72 hours, the world will be silent, the screens will be dark, the engines will be cold. In that silence, every soul will have to face the truth they have been running from. I saw a vision of a high-rise apartment in Chicago. A family was gathered around a dinner table, lit only by a few frantic matches. They were terrified because their phones were dead, not just out of battery, but completely unresponsive, as if the very idea of a digital signal had been erased from the world. I saw the father trying to find a flashlight, but the batteries wouldn't work. The laws of physics as they knew them seemed to have shifted. They have made their devices into gods, Jesus said sadly. They believe their connection to the world comes through a glass screen. For 3 days, I will show them that their only true connection is to me and to the people standing right in front of them. I saw visions of the highways during those 3 days. Thousands of cars were stranded, their electronic ignitions useless. I saw people walking along the shoulders of the interstates, carrying suitcases, their faces illuminated by the eerie, faint glow of the stars, which seemed brighter than they had been in centuries. The air was cold, a biting spring chill that seeped into the bones. I saw a group of travelers huddling together under a bridge, sharing blankets they had pulled from their trunks. They weren't talking about their jobs or their investments. They were talking about their children, their fears, and for the first time in their lives, they were asking if anyone knew a prayer. I saw the hospitals, Aizere. This was the most painful part of the vision. I saw doctors and nurses working by the light of old-fashioned wax candles. I saw them holding the hands of the dying, unable to use the machines that had always been their pride. But in that darkness, I also saw something miraculous. I saw a nurse in a darkened ward in Seattle lay her hands on a child who was struggling to breathe. She didn't have a monitor or a nebulizer. She just whispered the name of Jesus. I watched as the child's lungs cleared and his breath became steady and deep. When the false lights of man's cleverness fail, the true light of my spirit will be the only medicine that remains, he told me. This first darkness is a warning and a mercy. It is the labor pain that precedes the birth. He showed me the end of those 3 days on April 8th. I saw the sun return, but it looked different, sharper, more intense. I saw people emerging from their homes, blinking in the light, weeping with relief. But I also saw how quickly the world tried to forget. I saw the news anchors, once the power returned, talking about atmospheric anomalies and unprecedented solar interference. They were already coming up with names for it, trying to fit the supernatural into a box they could understand. They were telling the people that it was over, that the danger had passed, and that they should go back to work and back to spending. They will call it a freak accident, Jesus said, his voice echoing like a warning bell. They will use the weeks following the first darkness to rebuild their pride instead of their altars. They will ignore the silence they just experienced and fill their lives with even more noise to drown out the memory of the fear they felt. But for those who have ears to hear, these weeks will be the time of the final harvest. He showed me a vision of a woman in a small town in Kazakhstan, someone who looked like my own grandmother. She was sitting in a garden, planting seeds in the dirt. She wasn't watching the news. She was singing an old hymn, her voice steady and clear. She had used the 3 days of darkness to pray for her grandchildren in the West. I saw a golden thread of light rising from her heart, connecting to 1,000 other threads across the globe. These are the ones who understand, Jesus whispered. They know that the physical world is just a veil. They are the ones who will lead others through the second and third events. The vision shifted, and the warmth of the spring sun that had returned after the first darkness began to feel thin and brittle. Jesus led me through the months of May and June, and I watched as the world tried to heal itself with bandages made of pride and denial. I saw the leaders of nations standing on stages under bright lights, their voices booming through speakers, assuring the crowds that the event of April 5th was a once-in-a-million-year cosmic glitch. They talked about new regulations and stronger systems, promising that the world would never go silent again. I saw the people cheering, their faces lit by the glow of their replaced phones, desperate to believe that the comfortable life they had built was permanent. They are rebuilding with sand while the tide is already moving, Jesus said. His voice was heavy with a sorrow that seemed to vibrate through the very air. They have mistaken the return of the sun for a return to safety. They used the 3 days of silence to prepare their excuses instead of their hearts. He showed me a vision of a bank in downtown Manhattan. People were standing in long lines, their faces etched with a frantic kind of greed, trying to move their digital wealth into new accounts. I saw the numbers flickering on the screens, billions of dollars moving across the world in the blink of an eye. But as I watched, Jesus touched the screen in the vision, and I saw what lay beneath the numbers. The wealth wasn't real. It was just light and shadows, held together by a system that was already beginning to rot from the inside. The second darkness will not be a veil over the sky, Aizere. It will be a breaking of the foundations, he told me. The first was a call to listen. The second will be a test of what they truly value. The calendar in the sky moved to August 12th, 2026. I felt a change in the atmosphere of the vision. The heat of the summer was stifling, a heavy, stagnant air that seemed to press down on the cities. I saw the coastlines of the world, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, London, Tokyo. The ocean, which had always been a source of life, began to behave in a way that defied every human law. I watched as the tide pulled back miles from the shore, exposing the dark, dripping ribs of the ocean floor. I saw people running out onto the sand, laughing and picking up shells, thinking it was a miracle or a strange weather trick. But then the water began to return. It wasn't a giant wave like in the movies. It was a steady, unstoppable rising. It was silent and relentless. The rising salt, Jesus whispered. I saw the water flow into the streets of Lower Manhattan. It didn't just flood the buildings. It found the hidden veins of the city. I saw the salt water pouring into the underground tunnels where the power lines and the communication cables were buried. I watched as the salt began to eat through the insulation, causing massive hissing short circuits that looked like underwater lightning. At exactly midnight on August 12, 2026, the second darkness fell. This wasn't the atmospheric purple light of April. This was a physical destruction. In the vision, I saw the great transformers that sit in the basements of skyscrapers begin to groan and smoke. The salt had reached their hearts. One by one, they exploded in showers of orange sparks. I saw the lights of the East Coast vanish, not in a single sweep, but in a jagged, violent sequence of failure. This darkness will last for a week, Jesus said, but the damage it leaves behind will take years to repair. In this week, the hunger will begin and the masks of the world will fall away. He showed me a vision of a grocery store in a suburb of New Jersey. It was August 14th, 2 days into the second darkness. The air was sweltering, and without refrigeration, the smell of rotting food was already beginning to fill the air. I saw people fighting over the last few cases of bottled water. I saw a man holding a thick stack of $1,000 bills, offering them to a clerk for a single bag of rice, but the clerk just pushed him away. The money was just colored paper now. It couldn't be eaten, and it couldn't buy a drop of clean water. When the machine stops, the heart is revealed, Jesus told me. Those who have spent their lives serving the machine will find themselves empty-handed. But look here, Aizere. He moved my gaze to a small community in the rural hills of Pennsylvania. I saw a group of about 50 people gathered in a large barn. They had been preparing since April. I saw barrels of clean water lined up against the wall. I saw sacks of grain and jars of preserved vegetables. But more than the food, I saw the light. Each person in that barn had a soft, golden glow emanating from their chest. I saw a woman in the center of the group holding a small loaf of bread. She looked up and thanked God for it, her voice filled with a genuine peace that seemed impossible given the chaos outside. As she began to break the bread and pass it to the families, I saw a miracle. The loaf never got smaller. She would break off a piece, hand it to a hungry child, and the bread in her hand would be whole again. This is the economy of my kingdom, Jesus said, a smile finally touching his face. To those who trust in the world, August will be a month of starvation. To those who trust in me, it will be a month of multiplication. They are not just surviving, they are becoming the light for those who are lost in the shadows. He showed me the dark side of this period as well. I saw the government trying to regain control in the weeks following the August 12th event. By late August, the power was still out in most of the coastal cities. I saw officials setting up zones of stability. They told the people that if they signed a pledge of loyalty and accepted a digital identity that tracked their every move, they would be given a box of food and a gallon of water. I saw thousands of people standing in the hot sun, desperate and broken, signing away their freedom for a meal that wouldn't last the day. I saw the news, through the few working government channels, blaming the collapse on religious extremists and doomsday hoarders. They said the reason the recovery was taking so long was because people were hoarding resources and refusing to join the new system. The Great Separation is accelerating, Jesus warned. The world will offer a false light, a system that promises safety but demands the soul. My people must be ready to say no, even if it means staying in the dark. They must find the old ways again. He showed me a vision of what he called the spirit wind. I saw two groups of believers, one in Virginia and one in Tennessee. They had no phones, no radios, no way to reach each other through human means. I saw a man in Virginia kneel down in a field and pray, "Lord, our brothers in the valley have run out of salt and oil." In the same moment, miles away, a woman in Tennessee stood up from her chair and said to her husband, "The Lord is telling me the Smith family needs our help. Load the wagon." This is how my body will function when the wires are gone, Jesus said. They will hear my voice in the silence of their own spirits. They will move like the wind, meeting needs before they are even spoken aloud. But they can only do this if they have spent the months of the spring and summer learning the frequency of my heart. He showed me the dates between August and November. This was the most intense time of spiritual growth for the remnant. I saw people meeting in secret, sharing the scriptures they had memorized because their digital Bibles were gone. I saw children standing in circles, reciting the words of the prophets and the Gospels, their voices carrying a power that seemed to push back the physical cold that was beginning to settle over the land. I saw a vision of a hospital that had been abandoned by the system. It was dark and smelling of sickness. But in one wing, a small group of believers had moved in. They didn't have medicine, but they had the presence of God. I saw a man who was dying of an infection. A young girl, no more than 12 years old, walked over to him and laid her hand on his forehead. She didn't look afraid. She just said, "Jesus, heal your servant." I watched as the fever broke instantly. The color returned to the man's face, and he sat up, weeping and praising God. In the darkness of the second event, the miracles of the early church were being reborn. The second darkness is the school of faith, Jesus told me. It is where my people learn that I am enough. I am the bread, I am the water, and I am the light that no salt can ever extinguish. He then showed me a map of the spiritual state of the nation as we approached the end of the year. The map didn't show borders or cities. It showed points of light. In the east, where the physical darkness was the deepest, the golden pinpricks were the brightest. They were connected by thin, glowing threads that looked like a web of gold draped over the country. These are the sanctuaries, he said. By November, these will be the only places where there is true peace. Everywhere else, the world will be tearing itself apart in fear and anger. You must tell them, Aizere, do not look to the capitals for help. Look to the Father and look to your neighbor. The vision began to grow colder, and I saw the first frost of October 2026. The atmosphere became heavy with a final staggering tension. And now, Jesus said, his voice sounding like the roll of distant thunder, you must see the final test, the day when the silence becomes absolute. The air on that mountain height grew thin and sharp, vibrating with a frequency that made my spirit ache. I watched as the landscape of the vision shifted toward the very end of the year 2026. The world below us looked like a tapestry that had been torn and clumsily mended. The great cities of the east were dark scars on the earth, while the west looked like a fortress, bristling with walls and armed men trying to hold back the inevitable tide of hunger and fear. Jesus turned his gaze toward the final vision. Terence, he said, calling me by my soul's name, now comes the moment where the pride of man and the groaning of creation meet in a final, shattering collision. This is the day the world has chosen to celebrate the flesh, but I will use it to reveal the spirit. The date December 25th, 2026, appeared in the sky, glowing with a cold silver light. This was the third darkness. I saw the sun, which had been a source of warning in April and a witness to the rising waters in August, begin to convulse once more. It looked like a giant heart suffering a final massive spasm. A flare of white fire, larger than anything recorded in the annals of human history, erupted from its surface. It was a whip of pure energy, lashing out across the blackness of space to strike the earth. But at that exact moment, Jesus showed me the human side of the tragedy. Deep beneath the soil of the United States, in hidden bunkers and windowless rooms filled with glowing monitors, I saw men with hollow eyes. They were the ones who had built the digital walls of the world. I saw their fingers trembling over their keys as they sent a final sequence of commands. It was the kill switch. In the first hour of December 25th, Jesus explained, every power plant that is still humming, every substation that has been patched together with wire and hope, every major transformer in the entire nation will be destroyed. The sun will strike from above, and the pride of man will sabotage from below. For 3 days and 3 nights, from the frozen peaks of the north to the sun-drenched tip of the south, there will be no electricity anywhere on the face of the land. The silence will be absolute. I saw a vision of the steel graveyard. I looked down at the great interstates, like I-95 and I-80, which were usually rivers of light. Now, they were packed with millions of vehicles that had died instantly as the dual strike of the solar fire and the cyber kill switch fried every modern engine. Because it was late December, the cold was already beginning to bite with a murderous intensity. I saw a mother in a stalled SUV in the middle of a mountain pass in the Appalachian Range. She was trying to wrap her 3 children in the floor mats of the car because the heaters had failed, and the temperature outside was dropping towards 0. Her breath came in ragged, white plumes. She reached for her phone to call for help, but it was a cold piece of glass and metal in her hand, as useless as a stone. I saw her look up at the dark sky and scream a name she hadn't spoken in 20 years. The death toll from this third darkness will be over 30 million people, Jesus said. His voice wasn't cold. It was the voice of a father watching a house fire he had warned his children about for years. Most will not die from the strike itself, but from the sudden, total failure of everything they trust. There will be no trucks moving to bring food. There will be no pumps to bring water to the thirsty. The cities will become refrigerators of their own making. I saw a vision of Chicago. The wind was howling off the lake, a bitter, killing gale that rattled the windows of the skyscrapers. I saw thousands of people trapped in high-rise apartments. Without the electric pumps, the water couldn't reach the upper floors. Without the gas furnaces, which relied on electric igniters and blowers, the buildings became iceboxes within hours. I saw people trying to start fires on their hardwood floors just to stay alive, leading to massive blazes that turned entire blocks of the city into charcoal. There were no fire departments to respond because the hydrants were frozen and the trucks wouldn't start. But then, Jesus touched my eyes again. Look at the remnant, Aizere. Look at those who have kept the oil in their lamps. He showed me a small community in the Ozarks of Missouri. It was the same group I had seen before, but now I saw the spiritual mechanics of their survival. There was a hedge of golden light around the entire town, a barrier that seemed to deflect the freezing wind, creating a pocket of relative calm within their borders. Inside the town, life was moving with a rhythmic, old-world grace. I saw a blacksmith's shop where men were forging hand tools by the red light of a coal forge. I saw a communal kitchen where women were baking bread in large brick ovens heated by wood. They were singing hymns, and the sound of their voices didn't just fill the room. It seemed to provide a physical warmth that shielded them from the despair outside. They are not just surviving, Jesus said. They are thriving because they have returned to the order of the garden. They depend on the soil I gave them and the spirit I breathed into them. They do not fear the December wind because they have already survived the April fire and the August storm. He showed me a vision of a young man in that town who had been badly injured by a falling timber while clearing wood for the winter fires. There were no antibiotics, no X-ray machines, and no hospitals left. I watched as the elders of the church gathered around him in a cold basement. They didn't look panicked. They laid their hands on his shattered leg and prayed with a ferocity I have never seen. I watched as the bone knit together under the skin and the bruising vanished in an instant. When the false lights of medicine fail, Jesus told me, the true light of the healer will return to my people. But they must have the faith to ask. They must have spent the year 2026 learning the sound of my voice. I saw a vision of the scripture scrolls. Because the digital Bibles were gone and many physical books had been lost in the chaos, I saw children in these communities memorizing entire books of the Bible. I saw a 10-year-old girl stand up by a fireplace and recite the entire Gospel of John from heart. As she spoke, the words seemed to hang in the air like golden embers, providing more comfort than the fire itself. This is the restoration, Jesus said. The darkness is the womb of the new world. He then gave me the detailed instructions for the timeline of preparations, emphasizing that the window is closing even as I speak to you today. Tell them the physical preparations must be matched by the purging of the heart, he said. By the time they reach the window of March, they must have already begun their stores. But these days of February, these are for the deep work. I am moving through their homes right now. If there is hidden bitterness, if there is unforgiveness toward a brother, if there is an idol of silver or gold, they must cast it out. I saw a vision of a man during this upcoming window of time. He had a basement full of food, but he had a heart full of hatred for his neighbors. I saw the food in his basement beginning to spoil and turn to ash, even though it was sealed in plastic. His spirit is attracting the darkness, Jesus warned. No amount of preparation can save a man who refuses to forgive. He showed me the timeline again, clear and unmistakable, so I could write it down for you. February 18th, 2026. Today, the final warning, the week of decision. April 5th, 2026, the first darkness, the atmospheric warning, 3 days of silence. August 12th, 2026, the second darkness, the rising salt, the coastal collapse and the beginning of the hunger. December 25th, 2026, the third darkness, the total collapse, the kill switch and the great flare. Aizere, Jesus said, looking at me with a gaze that felt like it was stitching my soul back together. The world will tell you that you are a madman. They will point to the lights coming back on in April as proof that you were wrong. They will laugh at you in July until the water rises in August. But you must remain steadfast. My sheep will hear my voice in your words. I saw a final vision, the reconstruction. I saw the year 2028. The sky was bluer than I had ever seen it, scrubbed clean of the smog of the old world. The massive cities were quiet, many of them abandoned and reclaimed by the grass, but the countryside was dotted with villages that looked like something out of a storybook. I saw people working together in the fields with horses. I saw schools where the first and only lesson was the love of God. I saw a society where there was no more loneliness, no more evening news to worry about, because people were too busy loving their neighbors and walking with their Creator. The darkness is not the end of the story, Jesus said, his voice echoing as the vision began to pull away. It is the beginning of the greatest spiritual awakening in human history. Those who prepare and endure will see my glory in ways that people living in comfortable times never could. I felt that pulling sensation again, stronger this time, dragging me back toward the weight of my physical body. I felt the heat of the fire, the smell of the smoke, and the sudden, crushing weight of my broken bones. Lord, what if they don't believe me? I cried out as the light began to fade. Jesus smiled with infinite love. Aizere, you are not responsible for convincing anyone. You are only responsible for delivering the message faithfully. I will make sure it reaches those who are meant to hear it. Remember, you are never alone. I am with you always. The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air in a hospital bed, machines beeping frantically around me. My supervisor, Tom, was there, looking like he'd aged 20 years in a single afternoon. A nurse was checking my vitals with an expression of pure amazement. Aizere, thank God you're awake, Tom said, his voice shaking. You've been unconscious for days. The doctors, they said there was massive trauma. They didn't think you'd ever open your eyes again. The doctor who rushed in couldn't explain what he was seeing. Miss Serikova, he said, studying my charts. The explosion in your home was catastrophic. By every medical standard, the internal damage should have been fatal. We recorded no brain activity for hours. I've been practicing medicine for 30 years, and I've never seen a recovery like this. It's as if your body just decided to rebuild itself. But I wasn't the same person who had knelt by that couch on February 14th. I had been transformed because I had seen the future and had been given a mission. I've spent every moment since then trying to find a way to tell you this. I am sitting here on February 18th, 2026, and I am telling you that the window is closing. The first darkness is coming on April 5th. If you are reading this right now, you have felt the stirring in your own spirit. You know the world is fragile. You know the peace we enjoy is a thin veneer. Here is what you need to do. If you haven't stored food and water, start today. Do not wait for the sky to change color. But more importantly, if you have bitterness in your heart, let it go. Build your community. Find the other threads of light in your neighborhood. The choice is yours. You can dismiss this as the ramblings of a woman who survived an explosion. You can explain away my recovery as a lucky break. You can ignore the dates I have given you. Or you can consider the possibility that the God who loves you is trying to prepare you, that he is giving you a warning, not to terrify you, but to save you, that he is calling you to be part of a remnant that will not just survive the coming storms, but will serve others through them and emerge into a world made new. My name is Aizere Serikova. I died in an explosion and met Jesus Christ face to face. He sent me back with a warning and a timeline. The first darkness begins on April 5th, 2026. The second begins on August 12th, 2026. The third begins on December 25th, 2026. Between now and then, millions will be lost if they do not listen, but millions more will find the truth and become part of the greatest revival in history. The choice is yours, and time is running out. What will you choose?